How do you do?
They understood that you'd leave on your ship.
Edinburgh's contribution to 20th century music has been somewhat obscured behind the city's other cultural prowess. However, from these streets came a band who would influence the Beatles, Bowie, Dylan, Led Zeppelin, and so many more.
I cursed you to your face.
Right here were the pubs that gave birth to the folk scene of mid-1960s Edinburgh, including the sounds of the incredible string band.
My name is Mike Curran. I come from Edinburgh, and I'm very pleased to meet you all.
Well, I was aware how different and ahead of the time Robert and Clive were, because I was a fan of them and I used to go and see them every Tuesday in the Crown Bar.
I first heard Robert and Clive in the Crown Bar in Edinburgh in the spring of 1965. I now understand that the Edinburgh in the early 60s was a remarkable place. I mean, I've learned that slowly over the years.
After the success of the band's debut album in 1966, songwriter Robin Williamson headed to Africa and the Far East. When he came back, he was full of influences and also rare instruments not seen before in this country. With fellow songwriter Mike Herron, a sound was created that simply had not been heard before. It was world music before the term was even invented.
It was amazing. It was like they took Scottish folk music as if it had gone not only to the Appalachians, but also made a side detour to the Balkans and North Africa. And I just thought it was the most wonderful thing.
Well, the sound of the string band was very much based on, I think, on two things. Mike's background as a kind of rock and roller in Edinburgh, and Robin's kind of back and forth to Morocco, picking up instruments and trying to bring those things together, along with Clive and his banjo playing. This is kind of all this mishmash of stuff, combined with the kind of Celtic stuff of Robin's and the kind of down-to-earth stuff of Mike's. And that kind of combination was unique. I mean, some of the stuff they wrote was completely off the wall and extraordinary artistically, I think, and people loved that.
Sometimes songs are about things that have happened to you, or else they're songs that just kind of visit themselves upon you like dreams.
They did what they wanted, and Mike and Robin were both very different types of musicians, and they were very, very creative. They were a huge band. I mean, people don't realise just how big they were.
I became their producer and manager, and I felt that the folk circuit was not the right place for them. So I got them, you know, spots opening for Pink Floyd and playing in psychedelic ballrooms in London and generating a huge following.
The band reached the height of their powers in 1968 with a top 5 album and a headlining tour of the United States of America, making them the only Scottish band so far to have achieved such a fate. Then, in 1969, they were invited to play the humongous Woodstock Festival.
Being there was fantastic. We got flown in, and the roads were just choked up. So we got flown in a military helicopter with no side, you know, the kind of thing. And Ravi Shankar and Ali Raka were on the same flight. And he was terrified, clutching his sitar.
The band were very, very influential. There's Robert Plant and Jimmy Page always mention the band when they're talking about that period. We were playing at Drury Lane once in London, and just before we went on, Mike said, "Oh, Jimmy Page is out there listening." You know, and I was terrified.
The Beatles have been clear that they loved the Incredible String Band, and the Stones, certainly with their Satanic Majesties, they came and tried to sign the Incredible String Band to their label.
When this is maybe written, I think the string band will be seen as being possibly one of the most extraordinary, artistically, bands that has ever existed. It was extraordinary. It was like nothing else.
They were a band of the time. There probably could never be another band quite like the string band.
Into the mid-1970s, the band's star faded. What could never fade, though, was their influence on so many of the sounds that came after him.
Well, whether one likes it or not, everyone creates their own universe, you know, and that's really all I've done. Just create mine.